truly the sunlight really makes me look white. Makes me look old. Speaking of old, so I was in college back in the mid '80s to early '90s, and of course, about the early '80s was when the AIDS disease became known. And at first, we didn't have a name for it, but then AIDS, the name, came out. And I remember early on, there was a lot of speculation about how it was spread. It wasn't entirely known. And in college, even, I remember being in the infirmary. I must have been about my freshman or sophomore year in the infirmary at school for something. And they had public service announcement videos playing, like a lot of doctors' offices do. And it was all about AIDS, how to prevent AIDS, um, big concern that it, could be spread amongst heterosexuals. Of course, there's big concern about that on a college campus. I don't have to go into detail about that. And and there was no known treatments at the time, and there was a lot of talk about vaccination for it. But there was a lot of debate on the side of ethics concerning AIDS, whether or not somebody with AIDS would have to disclose whether they had the disease or not. And part of the issue was such concern about the spread of the disease, AIDS, because again, we didn't fully understand. You got to think this is back in the '80s. And while it was somewhat understood how AIDS could be spread, there was still a lot of information out there that, frankly, people were concerned that it could be spread through things like saliva. That might seem weird today, but the disease had only been around for a few years at that point, and information didn't spread quite as fast as it does today. So there was a lot of um, ethics, ethical discussions about whether or not you should have to disclose if you had AIDS, and what would be the repercussions of your behavior if you inadvertently spread AIDS to somebody else. Fast forward a little bit into more modern era. So for a long time, um, some I don't know if it's many states, but there are some states that will have you prosecuted for murder or attempted murder if you knowingly have HIV/AIDS and then engage in activity that would cause the spread. Definitely would cause the spread, like sharing of needles or sexual activities. And not too long ago, California um, got rid of a law that did that thing that prevented people from knowingly spreading the disease of AIDS and getting away with it. So now you won't be prosecuted if you know you have HIV/AIDS and then you engage in, let's say, sexual activity that could most definitely spread it. You won't be prosecuted anymore. I don't think I have to explain how that correlates to today, but let me venture into those waters a little bit. So, one of the arguments for people getting vaccinated against COVID is not so much the body autonomy thing, my body, my choice if I'm going to receive the vaccine or not. It's not so much that, it's aren't you concerned you might spread it to other people? Where is your concern, your love for your neighbor? Therefore, you should get the vaccine to reduce the likelihood of spread to the next person. And the reason I opened up with the discussion about AIDS, HIV, and the issue where it's no longer illegal to engage in sexual activity with somebody other than with somebody when you know you have HIV/AIDS, it's no longer illegal, and you can't prosecute that person. How is that different, or I should say, how can you have laws that will not protect innocent people from contracting the disease from somebody that's knowingly spreading it? How is that different than the situation? I'm sorry, let me back up, guys. This is the problem with doing lives. Is I've got a headache right now too, so I'm having a hard time formulating. But I think you get my point. I'm having a Joe Biden moment. Sorry. Sorry, I couldn't help it. So if I have to disclose my vaccine status for fear that I could be a super spreader of the disease, and that's not a violation of my rights, my right to protected health care, how is that different than an HIV/AIDS infected person being protected by the law in their spread of their disease? I don't get it. And it doesn't take rocket science to understand. I mean, we've got a lot of better therapeutics these days for HIV. In fact, I've got some dear friends who have adopted children with HIV who are HIV positive, but their levels are kept so low with viral therapeutics that they can't spread it. That's wonderful. Um, but at the same token, you are likely, one, not to die, very likely not to die, and two, very likely not to spread, or I should say, spread COVID without killing somebody. So you're very likely not to die, and if you do accidentally spread it, very likely you won't kill somebody by it. But if you have AIDS, HIV, and you engage in activities that's pretty much guaranteed to spread the virus, the long-term devastation to the individual you gave it to is higher. Why aren't we attacking that issue as forcefully? I'm just wondering. Because isn't the argument, if we just save one life, it's worth it? Say that to the AIDS victims who got it from engaging in activity with somebody else who had told them they weren't HIV, AIDS infected when they knew they were. Anyway, there's lots of ethical angles to discuss this at. And again, I'm going to urge you to watch our president's press conference from yesterday, where he outlined the upcoming mandates. So Joe Biden, September 9th, 2021, where he outlined the increasing mandates he's making, where we're practically making it criminal for somebody to remain unvaccinated, and that's a problem. So anyway, comments, I'd encourage them. If you've been a healthcare practitioner for as long as, if not more than me, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about with the HIV/AIDS stuff. And anyway, this ethics discussion needs to go on, and the more people that engage in it, the more likely we're to make a difference in public policy. John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru. Take care. God bless.